Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are advised that this film contains images of people who have passed.
To the tribes and explorers on the edge of the Great Victoria Desert, this wasn't just a frog, it was a water bottle, and the difference between life and death.
In the 10 years between the discovery of gold and the building of the pipeline to the new boom towns of the eastern goldfields, there was something more valuable than yellow metal.
Water. Water is the central character in the early years of the gold rush. Water-holding frogs, majestic gum trees, deadly epidemics and local breweries all play supporting roles.
While namaholes, waterholes, provide the first dramatic turning point in water's history.
To European eyes, the area looked dry and waterless. But before our story starts, people had been living here for millennia and had developed unique strategies to find and secure water.
In Aboriginal culture and spirituality, water is linked back to the dreaming stories, the spiritual connections, and right across our region there are many ways in which we managed the water and the water points. Ngadjul people, for instance, they would take a rock or a stone and place it in the tree, and the tree would grow around to create a hollow that filled with water at times.
Enter our first guest star, the water-holding frog.
It has the ability to fill itself with water in its bladder and skin up to 50% of its body weight. It grows up to 6 centimetres long, and when there's times of rain, it will fill up with water and then burrow down into the ground, and it actually then sheds some layers of skin to form a cocoon around itself, and it drops its metabolic rate to 5% of its normal resting rate, and it can stay there for 2 years or more.
If you know where to look in the dry seasons when they're down burrowed in hibernation, you're able to dig them out and have access to their water. That's one method, dig them up and squeeze them. Another method has been to roast them in the hot ash or sand, hot sand with a fire, and then so you've got frog meat and water.
That local knowledge was essential to the early European explorers, like Ernest Giles and future state premier John Forrest.
Back in the 1890s, some European explorers almost perished in the desert. They came upon a clay pan, and fortunately for them, the Aboriginal with them was able to help them to dig through the clay pan and find the water-holding frogs. They came across one at first, which sustained his thirst, and then on subsequent frantic digging, they were able to dig up enough frogs to water the men and their horses.
A number of these Aboriginal men that guided and were the ambassadors for the explorers, and their maps, as they filled in the blank pages from the Western or European side, identified where the good water points were.
In 4 expeditions in the 1860s, Charles Cook Hunt explored and mapped the country east of York. In the process, he developed a permanent water supply over 500 kilometres by building wells, tanks and dams and utilising soaks and waterholes shown to him by Aboriginal tracker Tommy Windich. 30 years later, these would be the lifeline that prospectors followed as they trekked to the new goldfields.
And so in this goldfields region, it is one of the most harshest and especially down Kalgoorlie way, one of the toughest places in Australia for water.
Enter stage left, the Namahole and a key dramatic turning point in our story.
Discovery of gold at Kalgoorlie was a direct consequence of Paddy Hannon and his party camping at Karlgoradara, the rock hole at Kalgoorlie. He went off for his morning ablutions, going to the toilet, and whilst there discovered gold.
Water had led the Europeans literally to the gold that would make fortunes and the region world famous. The result was thousands of men would walk the 250 kilometres from the nearest railway station to join the gold rush, and they all needed one thing: water. The problem wasn't just the influx of thirsty prospectors. With them came camel and horse trains. The consequences of the sudden influx of men and beasts were life-changing for everyone.
And it wouldn't be hard for the Afghans to have 40, 50 camels in a string of camels. But they would come onto these water holes, suck the whole damn thing dry. And so the Aboriginal people had no water.
Well, they wasn't very happy about it. You know, they had their ways of, you know, reserving their water to make it last. And these people, you know, coming here and feeding all the water to their horses and camels and all that, because the Aboriginal people didn't have them. And they thought that they was very invasive, you know.
And water provoked conflict between the newcomers as well.
There was quite a lot of animosity growing between the men walking and the cameleers, because the camels were leaving heaps and heaps of dung around these water holes, and they felt the cameleers should have moved their camels out. But I guess at the end of the day, everyone's pretty drastic on water, so you know, the argument stood.
And so the stage is set for a decade-long struggle of desperation, death and innovation, until the engineering marvel of C.Y. O'Connor's 500-kilometre pipeline brings fresh water to the goldfields.